at Corumdale Farm. Today we are talking all about succession planting. Succession planting basically means not planting everything the second after your last frost, but planting throughout the season so that you always have fresh, happy-looking flowers or vegetables and plants, assuming you're going to have bug damage and disease, and planting throughout your season for the best harvest instead of just one shot. So right here with my sunflowers, I have succession planted hundreds. This is my first planting. They're almost as tall as me. And as you go back, it's almost like we're going backwards down a slope as they get smaller and smaller. And those are the one I more recently succession planted all the way until these guys, which were planted last week. The reason for this is no one needs 600 sunflowers at one time. I want them blooming at different times so that I can enjoy them inside, give them away to friends, sell them, and not just have 600 sunflowers that bloom in a 5-day period and then that's it. I've got nothing else for the summer. So I succession plant them. I have my phone here with my data where I keep notes on my planting and planting days. I plant Procut sunflowers, it's their variety, and Procut sunflowers are pollenless. So they're really great to grow for bouquets that you bring inside, because then a bunch of the yellow pollen doesn't spill out and dust your dining room table or stain anything. So these are pollenless Procuts. All the different color Procuts bloom between about 50 and 60 days. And that's a great thing for flower farmers because you can schedule it on the calendar when you're gonna have scent blooms. But for the home gardener, that's a really quick turnaround for a flower, to know that you plant the seed and in 50 or 60 days, you're gonna be enjoying the bloom. I started these guys inside at the end of May, which has been about 55 days, and I have blooms. If I come down farther, looking at my notes here, these guys I planted around June 6th. So it's a week after the ones that are already blooming, and some of them are not yet blooming, which makes sense. And a couple of the early birds, the early achievers, are already blooming. Now these guys, my tiniest little ones here, I started these inside in June, the end of June, and I planted them out last week, maybe a week and a half ago. Eric helped me. So I can anticipate that they're going to bloom end of August, early September, which is about 50 days from now. And because of that, assuming my last frost is Halloween, I know that my very last day that I can sow Procut sunflowers is about Labor Day weekend, that I know they'll have time to bloom before frost. So in my timing, my very last succession planting of sunflowers will be the first week of September. So this is my Benary giant variety Zinnias section. It is the first Zinnia batch that I planted. I did not direct sow, I transplanted from seeds I started inside, but on May 21st, my notes tell me that I transplanted my seedlings out, and I already have blooms. And if I looked at the calendar, my first bloom was July 1st, which means from transplant to first bloom was 41 days until I had blooms. And so that helps me calculate when I can expect to see blooms from my other zinnias, and I'll show you their various sizes. I planted my second round, my second succession plant of zinnias on June 21st, which are these guys. And if I'm using roughly the 40-day date that I have for my Benaries, Benary, I can assume these guys I'm probably going to see blooms in early August. 41 days from when they were planted out is August 1st. I'm already seeing flower buds on the top of these, but I'm not truly counting that as my first bloom date because this isn't a usable stem. This is only like 9 inches high. So by early August, after some cutting back and pinching, they will get a lot bushier and they'll look like the original zinnias, which I can totally cut for bouquets. So early August for these guys. These last little weenies were planted out. The transplants were planted out about 2 days ago. It's my last round that I think I can get away with. And I can expect blooms adding 41 days is the end of August, early September. So I went from June blooms to early August to end of August. Now none of this means that any of the plants are going to stop blooming, but the reason for this is twofold. Zinnias are very prone to powdery mildew. You can spray, douse, treat them to oblivion, and in early fall, mid-fall, they're still gonna succumb to powdery mildew and get gross. That's totally gonna happen to my first zinnias, the Benary giants, and I like the freedom of being able to pull out diseased and unproductive plants, knowing that I have a fresh row that is much younger and is not going to succumb to the disease at the same time, and still have flowers and not have to end my season. When a zinnia plant gets sick and you pull it out and you didn't plant anything else, well, then that's it for the season. But if you succession plant, you are less stressed when disease happens or bug damage happens, because you have a fresh round coming up behind them. Another reason to succession plant is not just the disease pressure, but also the plants are just going to get tired. These guys are already blooming. You can tell they're pumping out a gazillion and one stems. It is so hot out. And eventually, probably sometime in August, they're just going to be tired. They spent their energy. They don't have a lot left to give. So the blooms are going to start getting really small, the stems are going to get shorter, they're not going to be as vibrant, and it's a lot easier to just cut those plants back, knowing that you have much younger ones either already blooming or about to bloom, with the really big, strong, healthy blooms, and not the tired, I'm done, I've given you all that I have, that your first plantings is going to be doing at that time. Another reason to succession plant is when we're talking about flowers that just give you one bloom. So a bit like the sunflowers, I have Gladiolus planted, and they are a one flower bulb. If I planted all 300 Gladiolus at once, there'd probably be a week in the summertime that I just had all 300 blooming at the same time. It's way too much to sell and enjoy at one time. So I planted in 3 blocks. The first block I planted in the end of May, and then the other 2 I planted 2 weeks after that, knowing that the growth wouldn't necessarily be able to make up the 2-week gap, so that they bloomed all at the same time, so I can have a staggered enjoyment of Gladiolus. This guy's about to bloom, which is really exciting, which means this section is going to start sending up their flower stalks here. And I'm going to have probably a couple weeks worth of flowers from this first planting. That guy's a little drunk, but he'll still be pretty. And then these shorter guys, once the ones in front are done, I've cut them back, they're done. These guys will be pumping out stems, which will be super fun to enjoy. And then last but not least, I have a little weenie section of about 50 that'll come after the middle round. I chose this year largely not to succession plant my cosmos. I do have one row that has about 12 in it, but that was a super late and unplanned planting, so I don't even know if I'm going to get blooms, but I keep these guys well trimmed. They prefer a little bit cooler weather, so come end of August into September, I think these guys are just going to be a mound of color and still be happy and not too stressed out. Right here I have double click cosmos, which are my favorite. They are a double and they look like a double cupcake ruffle, so I really recommend the double click Cosmo. The Seashells mix, the Versailles mix, and the Sensation mix are fantastic cosmos to choose from. And you can succession plant them, or you can plant them in one long row like I did and keep them well tidied and deadheaded so they just keep pumping out stems all season long. I really hope that helps explain what succession planting is. Obviously in the field, I have it on a flower farm scale, so I'm planting a lot. I'm planting 3 successions, but the same principles can be applied to your home garden. So instead of in early April after frost, just planning to do 1 planting of flowers, in your mind or on a calendar, plan to do 3 plantings, one in early May, early June, and early July, and you'll be having flowers all summer, and you won't feel as bad about cutting back the ones that just get their standard end-of-life diseases, and you'll still have flowers to enjoy and not be looking around at your garden at the end of July when it's hot as Satan and everything's dying and you are sad that your color is over. You'll know that you can get rid of those and you have another healthy round coming right after them. So this can be completely applied to the home garden, and I hope you consider it. And unless you're in like zone 4, you probably still have time to be planting sunflowers, and you probably even could get away with some zinnias if you hurry.